The following is a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
From the birthplace of modern winemaking, Sonoma, California, welcome to The Winemakers. Local experts Sam Couturi, Bart Hansen, and Brian Casey, along with host John Myers, invite you to listen in as they discuss all facets of winemaking. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and let's hear what the guys have to say this week.
The Pizza Port. It was a little weak. Welcome to The Winemakers, everyone. Hey, this is Brian Casey with Bart Hansen today. It's been a while since I ran the board.
Yeah, walking and chewing gum at the same time.
On the podcast. Yeah,
right?
It's been a while. John Myers, I think, is going to be here shortly. Sam Couturi off on assignment. Got Richard Bruno from Vinum Cellars in the house today.
Hey, guys.
How's it going?
Richard, welcome.
Thanks. Good to be here.
And we're actually starting with a little of Dane Cellars Pizza, which is one of the oddest colored rosés that you will see out there.
It really
in
is.
The market.
Especially behind this purple purple background we have here on our our recording studio.
Right. I mean, that's when people say rust sometimes on wine, you see like a bricolage or whatever. This actually looks, it looks like a rusty beverage, but it's actually delicious. I've had this, I think, when you first released it. So, Richard, where are you coming from today?
I feel like today, where wasn't I? So I had to run up to the farm and pick up my pickup truck. I had some empty kegs in there, which I'm returning to Free Flow today. Then I had to pick up some labels at the winery and bring them down to the warehouse. So, which is southern Napa. So, yeah, that's where I've been today so far. Starting in San Francisco, which is where I live.
Oh, so you live in the city and then come up here and
I have reverse commute.
Yeah,
Yes.
Don't you have home base in Napa, or is that not the case anymore?
I've
seen some Zoom stuff where you were in Napa, I think.
Yeah, so we Vinum Cellars has the old Greenwood mansion that is on the southern part of the airport. If you know where that old Victorian farmhouse is, it's kind of dark gray now. We bought it when it was that color, but yeah, it's a really cool building, and our goal is to have our tasting room in there, and we had to get a zoning change because we were going to put in a cafe. All this stuff happened before COVID and sort of changed everything.
So wow, that's really cool that's what that you guys have that and you're doing that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful building. I've spent some time restoring buildings. I did my house or participated in rebuilding my house in the city. It was built in 1905, so I have
wait a minute, really?
Some affinity for
a house built in 1905 in San Francisco. So you'd think, okay, you're doing all this work, and then the next year, shit gets shook to the core.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. All the records in that fire were gone. But if you go to the San Francisco Public Library downtown near City Hall, at the very top floor, they have this incredible historical library. And the librarians up there are super helpful, and they can give you some tricks to figure out when your house was built, even though the records may not exist. So they said that the very last thing that happens before occupancy is plumbing. They turn the water on, right? And so they turned the water on in 1905, so that means it was built or finished in 1905.
Yeah.
Then all the records were gone, and they ratified it as they were building the record space back and called it 1908. So that's how I know it was built in 05.
And what part of the city is it?
So it's Deux Triangle. It's kind of between the Mission, Lower Haight, and the Castro area.
Yeah.
Upper Market, I guess you could say.
No, I used to live on Haight and Laguna. So,
nice. That's
just up the road.
A stone's throw from where I live.
Yeah, cool.
Right by the Deux Park. It's great.
Have you ever seen there's some great video from 1906 where it's someone put a camera on a cable car that just goes down Market Street, and it's going towards the ferry building. It's this old black and white video, and people are kind of riding their bikes and riding horses through there. And it was supposedly like days before the earthquake. But it's a really cool video that you can just pull up on YouTube.
I haven't seen it. I'll have to.
It's cool to see the ferry building, but then to see what people are wearing and dusty.
Right.
It sounds like you've seen that, Bart.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
So Richard, I want to go back a little bit. So restoring houses, was this something when you grew up? Was your family in construction? Was something you did in college? Was it you just like to fix things?
Probably the latter. Everything you said sounds so much more romantic. I wish I built houses while I was going through school. But my grandfather on my mother's side, Joe, was my idol, and he taught me sort of to be fearless about tearing things apart and fixing things. And he taught me, the first thing he taught me to do is a brake job on my 1966 Volkswagen Bug. And here's my grandfather, who he must have been in his 80s, or 80 maybe, late 70s, early 80s, climbing under the car with me and showing out how to pull a wheel cylinder out. And I learned so many things just from that one interaction with him, from going to Sears to buy my first set of open-end Craftsman wrenches.
Yeah.
And, just where to get the parts and how to bleed the brakes. And it was, I remember it vividly. It was a great opportunity for me. And so most summers we would travel. I grew up in St. Louis, and my mother's from Baltimore. So we'd go to Baltimore, and my grandfather was a printer. So he used to do offset printing with a Heidelberg press in his basement. So I used
lots of cams and rods.
Yes. And I hate to say it, I don't know how many winemakers love the smell of ink and chemicals, but I have to out myself.
My dad was a painting
one.
contractor, so I'm kind of there.
So there you go.
Yeah.
I still love the smell of printing and all the smells in printing. So, and it's because of that.
And the reason why I was smiling is that you said something about like taking things apart and fixing them. And one of the first people that, like, when I got into the wine business, kind of taught me how to do anything was this guy, Bruce Osterley. Mm-hmm. And we had our labeler at Kenwood was a World Compact CM7.
Wow.
And it was, I'll never forget this. And it was built in like 1956. It was originally used for doing Heinz ketchup.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was all cams and rods and stuff. And it would break down. And he'd just go, all right, let's take it apart. And we'd take notes, on how to, theoretically how to put it back together. But there is an adventure in that. But you still, it's a lot of trust. You have to be fearless.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think a lot of people are
like, it's intimidating. You pull off.
It certainly can be. Sure. Yeah. There's a number of ways to ease the blow, I suppose. Things like putting nuts and screws in bags and numbering them,
right.
Or whatever.
Well, now you just take pictures,
and now you could just videotape yourself
exactly
the whole time being an idiot, right? And so, wait, what'd I do? Let's go back and look at that. Yeah.
All right. Anyway. So you grew up in St. Louis. Was wine part of
beer country?
Yeah, it was beer country. It was wine
for sure.
Part of your
for sure
upbringing at all?
I feel like I need to first shout out St. Louis and Anheuser-Busch because the best beer, probably the best beverage I ever had in my life, was at Grant's Farm when I was a kid. The coldest beer on a 107-degree day with 100% humidity. There was nothing more thirst quenching than that.
Right.
So that's another fond memory of my childhood. But my parents, well, first of all, my mother was an incredible home cook. And we ate very well. My parents liked wine. But I think the fashionable wine of the day, since we weren't in California, were things like Lancers in the sort of enamel looking bottle, and Blue Nun and
my
things
parents
like that.
were here in California, and that was what they drank. So
Right.
I think it was more the industry hadn't grown into, like, that was where the industry was at the time.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then they eventually transitioned into, they started stepping their taste game up a little bit. And I still remember having had the Charles Krug Chenin Blanc,
Well, yeah.
which I later learned how it was made, and that's somewhat horrifying. But
Wait.
Yeah, we gotta get into that.
yeah,
for
we
sure.
will. John McKay story there. But anyway, they also, let's see. Interestingly, they drank Chenin Blanc, and Petit Syrah was on the table periodically. So those were the two varieties I remember that were coming from either Inglenook or Krug or whatever.
Well, they had taste.
Okay, so
Seriously.
sorry, John, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
problem.
So
Hi, John Myers.
yeah, welcome, John. So Chenin Blanc and Petit Syrah. I mean, I know you had a whole career before Vinum, but was that what Vinum was started on? Was Chenin Blanc and Petit Syrah?
Yes, specifically Chenin Blanc. So, if you allow me to sort of catch everyone up with
Absolutely. I was gonna say
my
I
lineage.
kind of jumped in front of you there, but
yeah, no, that's okay.
but
So
go right ahead.
So I worked in the restaurant business when my family moved to California in 1982. We moved to the East Bay, in the Bay Area, and of course, aside from playing a lot of soccer and going to school, I worked in restaurants. Started as a busboy, and over the years, I just became more interested in food and wanted to become a server, and I did that. I still remember I had this wonderful woman who was training me, and sure, I had wine before, but I didn't have a lot of service background just yet. And she told me, listen, the best way to learn how to open a bottle of wine is by doing it multiple times. And so every day after you finish your setup, your side work before the shift starts, come over and visit Galen at the bar, and he'll let you open all the wines that he needs before his shift. I thought, well, that's a pretty good idea.
For the by the glass
exactly,
wines.
for the wines that, these days we have screw caps and they're easy to open. It doesn't take any time. But in those days, it was all just cork finish. So it was a great opportunity for me to really just kind of get my get some experience opening bottles. And I don't know, it was 6 bottles a day or something like that. But I remember after I started developing a relationship with this fellow Galen, it was kind of one of those situations where, hey kid, you ever try any of these? And I was like, no, never mind that I was, 17 years old.
I was
whatever.
wondering how old you were at this point. Okay.
So he goes, I tried this one. It was pretty good. What do you think? And so then I started tasting wine with this guy every day. And it was just a great introduction to not only to wine as a profession, but the experience, and to do so in sort of a, these people knew more than me, maybe not a lot, of wine knowledge, but more than I did. And they were certainly more life experience. So it was a great opportunity, some tutelage there, and it really kind of ignited my interest in wine. And so over the years, I worked in different restaurants, and the restaurants got better, the wines got better, the food got better. And soon after, I found myself in fine dining, and I was working in some really amazing restaurants in San Francisco. So from, the Mark Hopkins to Lascaux, that's no longer here. Moss's, that's also no longer here.
Wow.
I worked at Rubicon with Larry Stone for a number of years. And then much later, probably landed the dream job as the bar manager at Zuni Cafe.
Oh,
But I had already started my career.
We haven't been doing any of those that we've kind of
the chicken.
Yeah.
The chicken.
The chicken is amazing. It's still there. It's a great restaurant. But, I remember closing one night, and, family at home, and it's 3:00 in the morning. The homeless guy's banging on the door trying to get my attention for something, and I'm like, it's 3:00. I'm just leaving. This would have been the greatest job like 6 or 8 years ago, but I'm like kind of moving on from this, And I had already started Vinum Cellars with Chris. We went to UC Davis and met each other there in '94. Became pretty fast friends. We liked a lot of the same wines, and that's how we developed our friendship. And when we graduated, I was working at Bonny Doon as their distiller, and Chris was at Pine Ridge. And we set out to make Chenin Blanc financed on credit cards from a vineyard that we still get, the Wilson Vineyard Block 44. Ken Wilson is our grower. He now has passed those responsibilities on to his nephews. David Ogilvy's the vineyard, the guy in charge of the vineyard now. And so it's just multi-generational. They started their farm in 1921, row crops, beet farmers, sugar beets.
Fortunate enough to, when I worked at Kenwood, get to know the Wilson family.
Yeah,
I used to buy Chenin from.
It's a great overlap, because they used to kind of say like you guys are the new Kenwood boys.
Yeah.
That's what they said about us. So we were like the generation after you guys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's so cool that you guys have. I mean, that's how I found out about you. It was because of Chenin Blanc.
Yeah. So working in restaurants was a great opportunity. I learned so much, and I was exposed to so many things. I mean, I still remember at Rubicon we had this Pichon Lalande dinner, and it was just absolutely incredible. It was such a great dinner, and they brought Daniel Jonas from another Master Sommelier from New York. Actually, I guess he's not a Master Sommelier, but he's been a sommelier for years in New York, and so he worked at Montrachet. One of the sort of the main owner of Rubicon was Drew Nieperant, and he was a sort of serial restaurateur in New York, and so he had a bunch of restaurants, but wanted to do a project in San Francisco, and so they recruited Larry Stone to do that, and Tracy Desjardins, who's an incredible chef, and they put together so many really wonderful team members, and of course they had celebrity investors, Robert De Niro, Robin Williams, right. And and Francis Ford Coppola too, actually.
And this is after Jardinier or before?
Before.
Yeah, okay.
She left to start Jardinier.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So,
yeah,
but it was just a great. So this Pichon Lalande dinner we had. I'll tell from my perspective because it's a pretty funny story, and sort of may out me in some ways, but worth it, I guess.
Perfect place to do it is on the
stick a microphone in front of me, and I'll tell you anything. Anyway, so we worked when I was working at Rubicon on the back end of working there. I had already started going to school at Davis, and I was actually commuting from San Francisco, which was a little challenging, but totally worth it.
How old are you?
Oh God, 24, okay. 25.
Okay.
So anyway, I decided, because you really sort of have to be on the up to date with the menu, and you have to kind of be on it, and I just thought it probably would be better for me to move into the bar. And as it happened, there was a pretty strong bartender who was leaving to move to LA, and I talked to Elizabeth Takeuchi, who actually owns the Starling Bar in town.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She's wonderful.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's all coming together, because Elizabeth and I have known each other a long time, and
she is wonderful.
And part of it, I know
so
she
much.
lived on Tracy's property for a while. Her and Jason. Yeah.
Yeah, and
okay.
Jason's great too.
Yeah.
They're really nice people. Anyway, so she was. I guess she interviewed me, and she was like, "Great, let's do it." So talked to whoever the general manager was at the time to ask him if it's okay for me to transition, and I did that. And so then I was working in the bar on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, and allowed me to go to school and focus on my studies, and then also earn, participate in earning money so we could pay rent. Anyway,
A novel idea.
a necessity, right?
In the city, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But so fast forwarding. Well, anyway, so the setup was there was a service bar upstairs that had 4 seats at it, and there's the main.
Wait. Explain that. Why would a service bar have 4?
It was just sort of, there was room for it, and
Okay, because just for people that don't know, the service bar is typically when servers order drinks. It's where you can get drinks pumped out for a busy restaurant. So the service bar kind of pumps out your cocktails instead of a busy bar where your showpiece bar where people are sitting there and the bartenders are always paying more attention to the people in front of them because
for sure
they're getting tipped by those people as opposed to their tickets getting spit out of the printer.
For sure.
So that's weird to have a service bar that actually had seats
it was
in front of it.
it was the upstairs seating, and it's also where the pastry kitchen was. But and I should also point out that with what the focus of the restaurant was. I was pouring a lot of glasses of wine.
Yeah.
I made drinks too, but it was very wine-centric and food and wine-centric, and I enjoyed that experience. But, we would rotate from the service bar upstairs to downstairs, and downstairs clearly was the showcase. You walk in, and it was this beautiful bar with less seating downstairs, actually. But, yeah, I would say that's sort of more the VIP area on the main level. They had 4 booths, and the rest were open seating, but there must not have been more than a dozen tables, if that, on the main level. Yeah. But I loved it because I had more food knowledge about Tracy's food than anybody else behind the bar. And so we'd have people that would come in and they'd be waiting for their table, and sometimes they would just stay at the bar because they weren't missing anything. I knew everything about the food, and they were already sort of set. I already had a bottle of wine open for them, and they were just like, why leave? This is great. And the other bartenders loved it when I worked because we would just kill it. We would have, usually like you say, people come in for drinks and there's not a lot of food going on, and you get a ticket average up, and your tip's going to be a lot higher.
Tip on a $350 check is a lot better than on a $50 check.
Right, yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
And just a couple of those really makes your night, right?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So that it was a really good experience, and I felt like it was pretty symbiotic in that way. But so sometimes I'd be upstairs. Sometimes it was probably like 1/3, 2/3. So however the rotation worked, Elizabeth made it really equitable and fair for everyone. But there was this Pichon Lalonde dinner that was coming up, and it just so happened that I was scheduled upstairs, which kind of bummed me out. But Liz was really nice to approach me when I showed up to work and said, hey, look, I know you'd rather be down here, but it's just sort of the way the schedule felt. And I was like, it's okay, don't worry about it. And then she said, but, Larry said later we'll all taste the wines together once everybody leaves. And I was like, that's terrific, great. So the whole night was really about just like get the night done so that
get to the
we
good
could
shit.
just, sit around with Larry and he could tell us all these great stories about each one of these wines. And so it was a pretty busy night. It must have been a Friday or a Saturday. Well, it would have had to have been a Friday or a Saturday night because I was working. Anyway, Don Johnson and Cheech Moran came in that night with their entourage, right?
Nice.
And, it must have been 10 people or 12. And they ended up, we put them in Siberia, which is upstairs around the corner, so that they were a little bit protected. And
good for everybody.
Yeah. But, they came in, they roll in at like 9 or whatever. And so they're the last table there, right? So, my buddy John Hope, who was, I think he was bar backing in those days. He became a bartender, but he was nice enough to run up and sort of give me the play-by-play. And he'd tell me a few, they just opened this and they just opened that. And it was just an unbelievable experience. They had, well, I'll tell you what the vintages were later, but so everybody's gone from the restaurant upstairs except, Cheech and Don and their entourage. And Don walked up to me and he was asking about port. They wanted a bottle of port. So I talked through the ones that I knew and, explained, made a recommendation, and he was like, great, well, we'll have that. Well, the cellar is 2 floors down. We used to use the back stairs to get everywhere. There weren't a lot of overweight people working at Rubicon, let me tell you. Everybody was running up and down those stairs.
Yep.
So I ran down, got the port, walked carefully upstairs because I didn't want to disturb the sediment.
Right.
But decanted it for him, did everything right, poured it out, and then they were having a good time, and then he came up to me, and I thought, well, he wants to take care of the bill or whatever. That was a great bottle of port. Can you recommend another one? I said, well, we do have additional bottles of this if you like. He goes, we'd like to just try something else. Just why not? I said, okay, fine. So we talked through it again, and he ordered another bottle, and same drill, go downstairs, change all the glasses, right? Decant it, pour the wine. And at this point, I'm starting to get a little anxious about what's going on downstairs, right?
What you're missing out on.
Yeah, exactly. And John came up to reassure me that, Larry said, don't worry, we're going to wait until everyone's gone, and then we're all going to taste the wines together as a group. And so that put my mind at ease a little bit. And I think there was a third bottle of port, actually. And so did the drill one more time. And I'm like completely clean behind the bar. I'm like done. My drawer's all checked out. I've done my checkout. I'm ready to go. And right at this moment, John runs up and says, they're just about to leave. We'll be able to taste the wine soon. And I was like, oh, that's great. And I was really excited. And at that same moment, right around the corner of Siberia, there's this sweetest smell of Sensimelia coming around the corner. And then I had this dilemma. I'd be able to tell my grandchildren someday that I got high with Cheech Moran.
Right.
Or I'd be able to taste these wines that never in my life I'll ever get to taste again. So you can imagine which I chose.
Yeah.
So these vintages were insane. There were 2 bottles from the 19th century. There was an 1875 and an 1893.
What were they?
Pichon Lalande Bordeaux.
Wow.
It was incredible.
So how did they turn out?
Well, the eldest, by the time I got to it, because, there had been a couple hours since they opened it, but it was quite cloudy and almost milky looking.
Yeah.
It did seem to have wine-like aromas, but it was just so far, aged out. And I'm sure it tasted differently when it was or shortly after.
Yeah.
But by the time I got to it, it was pretty much peaked and fallen. And then the 93, however, and I love saying it that way because not the 1993, the 1893, was gorgeous. And it was still youthful and red fruit. It was just unbelievable. But so our consensus, though, John's and mine, they had a 26, which was also good. They had the 53, which was just a showstopper. Gorgeous wine. So good. And then they had a 66, a 70, an 86, and then an 89 and a 90.
How much was this dinner?
Oh, in those days, it was expensive. I'm sure it would be so much more now. But it was $1,000 a plate.
Yeah.
And these were collectors, so they may have been the ones who brought the wine. In fact.
Maybe they all.
So actually, if in that case, maybe it is a little pricey, but it was an experience, and these people, that's their life, is tasting wines like this. Right. So, but what a story, huh? I had my opportunity to get high with Cheech, but passed. What are you gonna do?
I know. I usually made the wrong decision in those moments.
There are people that would say I made the wrong decision. So
I don't know. I mean, it wasn't like you. Yeah,
it wasn't going to change your trajectory.
Well, and based on vintages, I mean, I was like, no, I think you made the right decision. If it was just some of their current releases, I would have said, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Yeah, no,
Exactly.
I totally would have made the.
But when else are you going to go
choice.
back in time like that?
No, I don't think ever.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Not unless you're hanging out with Larry Stone more than I do.
Right.
These days. But
Right.
Anyway.
And so where was Rubicon? I don't know that I ever went there.
Wasn't
I think the address is 558 Sacramento, and it's the current location of the Wayfair Tavern. And that's one of Tyler Florence's places.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
City.
I was a Kimpton guy, so I worked I worked at the Hotel Monaco at the Grand Cafe. I worked at Puccini and Panetti's and Scala's. And Harry Denton would always show up at our
That's fun.
And party with us. And
we had parallel lives, I think. We knew we probably know a lot of the same people.
Well, and then dated a hostess from the 5th floor. So then Raj Parr was a som. So then we would end up at his house or his
Raj
apartment.
Parr was a barback when I was at Rubicon.
No shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think he would remember me from back in the day, but we would be at his house at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning and opening up some fun shit.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And Jardiniere was always a cool spot. That was one of my go-to spots for having a good dinner or a good bar experience.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that might be where I first met Liz, was there at Jardiniere. And then we ended up working together a bunch of different scenarios, catering and
sure.
restaurants and stuff. So
Jardiniere was a beautiful restaurant. They did a great job.
Yeah,
I loved how the bar was right in the middle of the room.
Oh yeah,
circular, really pretty.
Totally. All right, so you're going to Davis. You're working at a restaurant, and then first job. How do you land Bonny Doon, or is that offered to you, or you see that it's up for?
So at Davis, they have a jobs posting. I assume they still do. It's probably online now, but they just had a bulletin board in the department, and you'd look on the board and see who was offering positions. And for the most part, they were internships that were being posted, but sometimes there were jobs. And I was taking distillation with Roger Bolton and learning all the theory of distillation. And I saw the posting at Bonny Doon for a distiller, and I just thought, I always wanted to work for Randall, and maybe not as a distiller, but I just think the opportunity to work with him would be, sort of a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, he's a very iconic.
He is, and
person.
He's he's a literary genius, and he's really just a sweet man. He's a wonderful person, but he's very experimental and sort of always seems to be like on a quest for knowledge, and
to some extent,
in that way.
Fearless, like not
for
afraid
sure.
to,
without a doubt,
not afraid to do something and preach it and then turn around and go the other way.
Yeah, for sure.
And test things. So,
but I'm just thinking he's definitely not making Chenin Blanc or Petit Syrah. He's probably doing, it's mostly Rhone stuff, right?
Yeah, which I was super into, and I love those wines. And
was it in Santa Cruz, or where was the job?
The job actually was in Santa Cruz in the mountains.
Okay.
So their original, where their tasting room was, and that's where the still was. It was just a single Holstein still, and it was a single batch copper still.
And what was the product that was made?
So it was making eau de vies and grappa.
Yeah.
So, but then we did some other things to try to, maximize the use of the facility. It was just two of us up there, myself and Dave, and we just did what we could. Distilling is, you ferment, you make your wine or your beer, and then you boil it and distill it down. And so we were doing that all day long, but the still, it's a slow process, right? So there was lots of other time to do other work, and so worked on the first Cardinals Inn that they made, the Ralph Steadman label.
Yeah, that
wine was really good. And then we did the Old Telegram blend and some of the cigar, one of the vintages of the cigar wine too.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't like I didn't have any opportunity to make some of those wines, and it was really a great opportunity that was afforded me, for sure.
But that's a different drive too. I mean, go in San Francisco Davis and then go in San Francisco.
Oh my God,
Santa Cruz.
My commutes were stunning. I mean, I get to drive Highway 1 every single day to go to work.
Yeah.
it was always beautiful.
Yeah.
Every
Yeah.
single day. It didn't matter what the weather was doing. It was always gorgeous. So, yeah, I missed that actually.
Huh.
It was beautiful
Yeah.
and very peaceful. Like my commutes have always been reverse commute, so not
Right.
trafficy, which is great.
Yeah, totally.
But to do it along the beach every day, I mean, who wouldn't take that?
Yeah. All right, so you're getting an opportunity to play around with wine. What's the next step after?
Let's try that Chardonnay.
You got it.
Yeah, so this Insider Chardonnay 22 from Carneros here in Sonoma.
We kind of waxed over the Chenin. It was delicious.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It happens. It just goes down easy and you move on to the
For
next.
sure. No, it's nice. I love the acid on it, and the minerality too
Yeah.
is really nice.
Yeah, I mean, we get, getting back to Clarksburg, I mean, the Wilson family, they've been growing it for years. I think there are, I'm a believer that certain varieties should be grown in certain places. And hard to say that Chenin Blanc doesn't completely prove that. But most winemakers would agree the best Chenin Blanc in California comes from that appellation. And we seem to think that it's from this specific vineyard. It's
Right.
done really well for us.
Right.
And
And
at this point, those vines have some age on them.
For sure. Yeah, they are older vines
Yeah.
now. So, yeah. So yeah, Chardonnay. I'm not a big Chardonnay fan. I mean, I'll drink white Burgundy all day long for sure. And it's not that I don't think that some producers here do a good job replicating that style or being inspired by that style. But it's just not my go-to wine that sort of
No.
makes me happy. And maybe part of it's because it was so popular when we started making Chenin,
Right.
that I still have a chip on my shoulder about it. But
As you should.
I just don't really like. Sometimes I just want to have a glass of wine and enjoy it, and I don't like it. The older I get, even with beer, I love all kinds of beer, but when I come home from work and I'm hot from working in the vineyard, I want to drink a Modelo. I don't want a
Yeah.
double IPA, right?
Right.
And so I sort of consider Chardonnay similar in that regard. It's like if I want something refreshing, it's not going to be a Chardonnay. And for most people, maybe not most people, but for many people, Chardonnay is sort of the white wine you drink.
Yeah.
And I think the industry foisted that on us, sadly. And anyway,
After they ripped out all the Chenin Blanc, you mean?
Right. I mean, to
Exactly.
the demise of Chenin Blanc.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So why do we make Chardonnay? Well, it's so funny. Like we started this company on credit cards, right? Start with Chenin Blanc, and boy, that's an uphill battle, right? It's just starting a company
Right.
anyway. And then we had really good success. And looking back, maybe it should have been a little surprising that we were that successful, but there was something about our label that really appealed to kind of an F the man audience, which I think we capitalized on. Whether we knew what we were doing or not, I don't know.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because you guys were one of the first, to my memory, to kind of change the norm on the label in the F the man, kind of attitude, not the traditional label. You're kind of poking fun at yourself, having fun with it.
Sure.
Was obviously a thought process.
Well, first of all, when I was working at Bonny Doon, I feel like Randall.
Speaking of,
Randall gave me. I worked for this person, and he almost gave me permission to have fun with labels. Right.
Yeah.
He showed me that it's okay.
Yeah.
And so I think I was inspired by that. But our very first wine was very pretty and almost
Okay.
conservative looking.
Okay.
It was called Point Blanc. We later found out that was a trademark owned by Peter Michael, so we had to change the name. The wine later became White Elephant, but that was a blend of Chenin Blanc, Viognier, and Roussanne, and it was all barrel fermented. It was a really good wine. We ended up stopped making it just because we make a Chenin, and at some point things get a little crowded. You make too many wines, and that's happened to us more than once. But it was we were trying to get a wholesaler in, I think it was New Mexico, and it was the wine patrol guys, and we sent them. We had extra Chenin Blanc left over after making the Point Blanc blend in '98, and we sent them samples, and we mocked up a label, and they said, "We love the wine, we love the price point, but are you guys opposed to humor on a wine label?" And then that we were just like, okay, you asked for it, right? And that's what we came up with. We went to Clarksburg. We took pictures with an old Nicormat camera, and that's what we came up with a picture of Chris and I hitchhiking in Clarksburg with the sign that says, "We'll work for Chenin." So it was sort of like that can-do attitude, that sort of like, you know, pulling yourself up from your bootstraps. And also, you know, I'm hitchhiking, you can see my thumb. It was intentionally, my hand was intentionally oriented to sort of be giving you the bird instead of the thumb. And that was really the message that we were trying to broadcast to our audience, is that, you know, like, fuck Chardonnay, you know, like, this is really good. And it's almost ruined all of it. It's almost been completely ripped out because of the popularity of this other varietal. So.
But also fuck price point, right? Because you guys are probably, you're coming in at a price point that is lower than Chardonnays, but you think the wine is better than, and it's kind of a F you to that too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You know, we always wanted to make wine that we ourselves could afford.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're still the same people that started the company.
Yeah.
And that's still our philosophy today. That said, costs have gone way up, and so we have to price our wines according to, you know, having to make a profit.
Can you put a percent on the increase in costs, just say over the last 5 years, 25, 50%?
Yeah, I won't answer that question specifically, but I'll just state the obvious one, which is interest rates have doubled. So, like, we went from paying interest that was manageable to now it's the same as, like, you know, it's a six-digit salary, right? So that I'm paying an interest, right? So, you know, I don't have an answer for you. If I knew, I'd probably just barf it out because I don't have a very good filter. But yeah, I think when interest rates double, that plays into the calculus pretty harshly.
Yeah. Well, and John, you know, glass was hard to get for a long time.
Oh, absolutely. Label,
and then,
everything.
And then I don't know if cost of fruit in Clarksburg, because I think and we're in such a little bubble here because, you know, everyone I know makes wine. And so I don't know if Clarksburg has sort of gotten a reputation for doing Chenin Blanc. And I think Chenin Blanc is probably as popular as it's ever been since the 70s. So I don't know if fruit prices are getting higher.
They seem more commensurate with what John's asking. They've had to raise their prices relative to the costs that have been handed to them.
Yeah.
And so, but you know, the cost of fruit going up, glass issue. I mean, the real criminals in this whole thing are the shippers. Because I don't know if you know this, but it used to be $1,500 for a container to ship anywhere in the world. Mm-hmm. And during the pandemic, they put a 2 in front of that number. Yeah. So every container was $21,500 instead of $1,500.
Whoa.
So that's what screwed everything up. Yeah. And it's unfortunate. And the companies that, you know, glass companies making glass overseas, bringing it over, had to find a way to, you know, they didn't just directly pass that cost over. They had to pass some of it over. Right. And, you know, that and paper for labels was going up. I mean, just everything went up. And so I think each of us in all parts of the chain, we didn't pass it on entirely. So because everyone sort of softened the blow a little bit, I think it was manageable. No. But it was a huge, huge impact, and prices have been coming down now. I don't know what a container price is now. I know it's not $21,000 anymore, but that's crazy. That's gouging. Yeah, and that's where gouging. I think the government should step in, and they didn't, as far as I know. or maybe they did, but they allowed it to happen.
But it
for a
also
while.
it promotes making, and this is where, it gets a little sticky. It sort of promotes making things here in the United States, right? When those prices are high, then people might get off their ass and say, okay, let's open up this factory again and actually start making glass here in the U.S.
Well, the glass factories are just ginormously cash intensive and energy intensive, right? So
Not very California-like.
It's a that's right. Maybe they should just build them in Nevada. They don't care about that there. So and then just truck it over,
there.
right? Anyway, so that's part of the problem, and it's all the glass factories here that went and built and set up these glass factories in China and in other places like Taiwan and maybe Mexico as well. But part of it is just trying to manage the demand, right?
Yeah.
Has been the problem there. But anyway, look, so we make Chardonnay. Why? Not because I love Chardonnay. I know how to make it, and I know what a good one is, and I will certainly drink it. It's not my number one choice. But there's a lot of popularity with, heavy ML Chardonnays. And what we try to do is we try to reduce the amount of diacetyl so that the wine is more creamy as opposed to super diacetyl,
So
right?
you're stirring.
You're doing a lot of stirring during the barrel process.
Less butter.
And less butter. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So so the wines, I feel like all of our wines have really good acidity. That's important to us because we think that wine is
Thank
supposed
you.
to be food friendly.
Yes.
And we think both of our Chardonnays accomplish that mission. Our other Chardonnay is from Monterey.
Yeah.
So
No, it's great. And we're actually drinking it warm, and it's about 75
Yeah.
degrees outside.
yeah,
And it's still
And
delicious.
it's delicious.
that's
Right.
good.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
No, that's a good sign.
But I was going to say, I'm digging the temperature that we're drinking it at.
Yep.
I mean, it's a
Nice.
nice one.
I mean, John, Chardonnay, Marsanne, Roussanne, a little bit warmer is not a bad thing. All right, so let's go. I mean,
Where to next?
first of all, did you say that your partner is making wines for Pine Ridge?
At the time, when we started the company, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
not anymore.
No. We
Okay.
both left.
I want to have a
those
conversation with those people.
Jobs. Yeah.
Make Viognier or make Chenin Blanc. Why do you have to blend those things together? I love Viognier and I love Chenin Blanc. Why do you got to put them in the same bottle?
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's it's a good product, and it's so funny. Like people even sometimes think it's a Viognier.
Yeah.
Like even people in the industry that should know better think that their Chenin Blanc Viognier is actually a Viognier,
No.
and it's like, are you confusing that with Klein or what? Why?
Well,
I don't understand why.
I mean, it's the whole thing for me is the two different varieties. Like Viognier is an impactful wine. It's kind of as we've had these discussions about Grenache and Syrah. Like Syrah makes a big impact on Grenache.
Yeah.
Petit Syrah makes a huge impact on Zinfandel, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very fine line with what you can put in there, in my mind. I don't know.
It's just annoying to me because I love both grapes, and I don't know why you have to mix them together. But I can see maybe the thinking being, hey, these are two grapes that maybe a lot of people don't know about. So to get them to drink it, maybe let's put them together.
I mean, they're
Right.
And so we're kind of killing two birds with one stone.
They are pretty different.
Yeah.
I mean, Viognier is super perfumed and
Yeah.
it's got all of it.
Oily and yeah.
Yeah, I find Marsanne more oily, but
Yeah.
still. But it has more glycerin, I guess. It's
Yeah.
got more mouthfeel to it. And usually when made well, the alcohols are higher because you pick it ripe. Chenin Blanc is almost the opposite, right? It's picked underripe. Acidities are high or higher. So then maybe when you blend that in, it sort of takes it down a little and balances out. We did it for a couple years, and it just didn't really move the needle. The wines were good, but it just didn't.
Yeah.
It was more their thing than ours.
Yeah.
So we just decided to just stick with our regular Chenin Blanc.
Thank you.
We know what it is, and it's clean, and the label's a little bit more pretty, restaurant appropriate. But then
Yeah.
on the inside back of the label,
Right.
and you look through the bottle, you can see our original label with Chris and I hitchhiking. So
Yeah.
we haven't forgotten the past, trying to celebrate it in sort of a more discreet way, I guess.
Right.
So Vinum wines are available all across the United States, right?
Theoretically, yes.
Theoretically, yeah. Right.
Our distribution partners have
done a pretty good job.
Well, they've taken a long break from COVID. So we're trying to get them reignited. I think part of the problem there is that, every company with multiple employees most likely had to lay some people off. And we were pretty heavy in restaurants. And our marketing people could never tell us what the split was, but during the pandemic, we figured out that we were 80% in restaurants, and restaurants all closed for at least some period of time because of the pandemic. And I think there was a shuffling of people, and there were probably people that were close to retirement age that just said, I'm done. And then there are other people that, they had to move on for whatever reason, and they now work for a different wholesaler. So they know our wines, but they're not out there selling our wines anymore. They're selling some of our competitors' wines. So we have a national sales manager that's out there trying to, reinvigorate the brand and remind people who we are. What's crazy is that so many people that he works with love the wines, but had no idea before that day that they're even in their book.
Right.
And that's sort of what's going on with distribution in America today, is that there's just so many products in so few wholesalers that, I learned really quickly that you can't buy my wine in a store if it isn't on the shelf, right? I mean, you need to be there or you're not going to be one of the chosen few, right? So that's a difficult reality to understand for some people in distribution, but for us it's essential for us to be at all successful. So we realize we've been working really hard on trying to get that message out. And I feel like we're still pretty value-oriented in terms of the climate of other choices that there are out there. But we also really have kind of the wine pyramid, right? We make wines that are mid-tier pricing and very top-tier in terms of cost, quality.
Yeah.
And you get closer to the top of the pyramid and you have a smaller production, too. That's why the pyramid gets smaller. The point gets smaller. So so that's really, I brought you some wines that represent that. The Chardonnay is sort of a mid-tier $30 Chardonnay, and then the Scrapper is $35, and then I have our estate vineyard Hoffman Block Cabernet from Napa, which I farm myself. I'm like ridiculously sore from netting this weekend. Oh my god.
So why don't you back up and talk about that, because acquiring an estate vineyard in Napa Valley is not for the faint at heart. On our show we've talked to some people who farm over there, and we know how expensive it is, and we know how expensive the real estate is. And can you tell us how
how'd we do it?
How do you guys do it?
Well, so
I mean, you're a lot bigger than a lot of our guests in size of winery, but you're still just two guys. You're still just Vinum Cellars, which started, very modestly, as you said, financed with credit cards.
Yeah. Well, so we've been getting this fruit since 2005. Or I should say, I've been working with this fruit since 2005. I first discovered it when I was working at Don & Sons, and I was out looking for grapes. And one of the brokers turned me on to this location, and I showed up, and I was buying a lot of Napa grapes. And it was a good time to do so because the prices weren't so bad. But when I arrived there, there was something about the site that I found special. It was just, I don't know, maybe Randall Graham might say it had good feng shui or something, but it felt really good. And the way it was, the vineyard was laid out, it was, running uphill, and Cabernet, Clone 23, the Laurel Glen clone.
Cool.
So it's a smaller grape variety.
Mm-hmm.
I've been friends with Patrick Campbell for a number of years. He's a good friend. So that, that was a good thing about it. And so, I worked with the fruit, and, it went into a much larger blend, but the quality of the fruit from that first vintage, I knew it was really, really good. And so then the next year they were looking for a contract, and, it's an 8-acre piece. So we must have gotten 12 to 16 tons. So that wasn't going to hurt Don and Sons, right? It's another, Plonka wine that they wouldn't have to worry about. I'd just buy more from somebody else. And the wines were great anyway, so it didn't matter. So we signed a contract for like 3 years, and just kind of kept renewing that every year. So 16 was our first vintage. 16, there I go again. 2006, pardon me, was our first vintage with this. And we just, made it every year and really liked the fruit. And then after talking to our grower, the Hoffmans, they seemed, there's something about our conversations that seemed to suggest that maybe they're kind of not into doing this anymore. So it was like our penultimate.
Was it one particular thing they said?
Yeah, read what you want into that.
Not really.
Okay.
It's sort of a number of things that I now know what are, but
Seemed to be a little cold.
so I went to renew the contract, and I put a first right of refusal clause in the contract, and I told them, pointed it out, it's not the same contract. I added this little thing. They were fine with it. They signed the contract. Ooh. Then the next 3 years goes by, and then renewed the contract again, and they signed it. And then in 2018 I got a phone call from one of the owners, and she said, hey, we decided to retire, and we're well aware you have a first right of refusal in the contract, so here you go. I'm just telling you, I'm giving you, this is your notice. So I said,
did that come with a number, or did they let you extend the number?
I asked these types of questions anyway. So I said, well, so when are you going to list the property? And she said, tomorrow. And I said, oh, thanks for the heads up. That's awesome.
Seriously. Yeah.
Appreciate the runway there. Anyway, it got us in motion. And the first thing I had to do was, report it to my company, because Vinum Cellars has the contract and I'm not the only owner. So I talked it over with Chris, and he had just started Horse and Plow, and it just wasn't the right time for him to do that. So he said, I'll pass, but if you want to do it, go for it, So I was trying to figure out how I was going to swing it financially, and talked to my wife, and I said, look, we do have a duplex in the city. And I thought, well, we could just sell one of them, and that's how we could get the money to put down on that property. And, my wife was like, well, I really want I want to get this property, but I also don't want to sell downstairs. And I said, well, yeah, I understand that, but something's got to give here, right? So one of my best friends, Sam Balakian, I've been making wine with him for years down in Paso Robles. He owned SVP Winery. And he's kind of like a father to me. He just gives really good advice, and from financial to circumstantial to winemaking, whatever. So I called him because I wanted his advice on here's my situation, and I'm starting to think I can see how I can pull this off, but I can sell this property. I don't really want to, but I feel like I kind of have to. But now I'm also having this weird feeling that maybe I'm too close to this. Like, maybe the desire to want this is exceeding whether or not this would be a smart financial move. So I was just simply trying to get his advice. And he goes, well, it sounds like you need a business partner. And I said, well, I told Chris, and he just doesn't want to do it. And he goes, no, I mean me and Valerie, his wife. And I said, well, that's not really why I called you. And he goes, I know. So I said, okay. But by the time that phone call was over, he said, well, we'd like to participate. And I said, would you like to see the property? And he said, not really. We trust you. So that's sort of how it started, and that's how it became possible. I did make them come up and look at the property, but in 2018 we were able to buy it. I'm on the hook for half, and Sam and Valerie bought the other half.
And are they taking some of the fruit and then
They are not. So
Okay.
that circumstance is so. Unfortunately, Sam passed away in 2020. And they did end up selling the winery and came out whole. They got Valerie did a really good job of making sure that she, got the price that Sam expected, and so now she's I think too young to be tired, but she put in a lot of hours and deserves it. So we're business partners now, and Vinum is the sole purchaser of the fruit. We're starting to expand a little bit. We have 3 new blocks actually. One of them's Merlot, which I named after my daughter Rosemary, and then I named the high density Cabernet Hillside Planting after Sam. And then we have a small Cabernet Franc behind the house, which I named after my wife Anya.
So you've expanded. It was 8 acres planted.
Yes.
Previously, and now you've expanded it to how much?
It's an additional. Probably I did some extension work on the 8 acres, and that's probably close to 9 now.
Yeah.
And then with the other 3 blocks, it's probably a total of just under 11 and a half acres.
Cool.
Probably.
And whereabouts in Napa is it?
So we're on the east side of the valley, right off of Monticello Road.
Oh, yeah.
We're about 600 yards from Atlas Peak, and we're very close to Woodin Valley, but sort of more on the Berryessa, heading towards Berryessa.
And it's all hillside?
So the original block, which we call Hoffman, we named after the people we bought it from. That's all hillside, and they run up the hill. And then Sam's block is more of a contoured block on a curve. It's somewhat terraced in certain areas of the block. And then Rosemary's is pretty flat. And then the Cabernet Franc behind the house is also on a hill. But it's a pretty narrow band, so it's not like terraced or anything. So.
Okay, so and I think we started this conversation talking about a house with possible tasting room / food,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
is this like what's going on with that?
So yeah, I think the best way to describe it is I've been trying to put these pieces together, and the goal was to take our office, which we'll have a tasting room at some point, and put a cafe in there, and then that would feed the local
insane?
neighborhood.
You're gonna serve chicken there?
Yeah, maybe that's a good
Vinum.
idea. Get the Zuni recipe. No, we were just thinking simple. Order at the counter.
Yeah.
Take a number, and we'll bring your food,
so-
or ring the bell when your
And
food's ready.
retention. So keep people on the property, get them to come in and taste some wine and eat some food, and let them hang out.
Yeah, well, so there's 2 different locations. The vineyard location
Okay.
is kind of more remote. It's near Circle Oaks, where
Mhm.
if you know where that is, and the office tasting room is closer to civilization, right? It's near the airport, in Napa Airport,
Okay.
and it's a great location. It's a beautiful farmhouse,
Yeah.
Victorian farmhouse.
And there's a whole bunch of people looking for somewhere to get lunch down there.
For sure. There's really nothing right
Right.
now. And
Huh.
so that's been part of my dream to put that together. But what, the COVID really just kind of destroyed our entire business in terms of selling through distribution.
The
And
momentum.
we have to fix that before we can take steps forward.
Do you do any direct-to-consumer at all?
Yeah, it's just through the website, but we also are now starting to do tastings by appointment. So they're winemaker-led tastings, so it'll be Chris or I that will do these tastings. We've got 18 time slots per week at the moment during the week. We're looking at maybe trying to expand those into the weekend, because that's generally when most people come. So that's probably our next step right now. But if you go to our website, vinumcellars.com, there's a talk page right on the splash page, and you can sign up for tastings there. And we do 5 wines, and taste you through them. It's only $50. I think that's a pretty
You know,
good
is
price.
it these 4 wines and then one other? The ones that we're trying today?
Yeah, it would be a collection like this or very similar. So probably 2 heavy, serious reds,
Right.
a Pinot Noir most likely, and then the 2 whites, a Chenin Blanc and the Sonoma Chardonnay.
Okay, cool.
So
And the Pinot Noir from...
we have 2. One's from the Sonoma coast and the other one's from Monterey. So we probably, invert the Chardonnay and the Pinot selections because we have 2 Sonoma selections and 2 Monterey.
How different is the Monterey?
Well, we make the wines very similarly. Same clones, in fact. Same clone of Pinot, but also do the same barrel fermentation and the stirring. So it's interesting to taste those wines side by side because they're very similarly, they're made the same way, same clone, different locations. But they, there's, it's a terroir difference, I suppose. To me, there's a little bit of a concentration difference. I feel like Sonoma's a little bit more concentrated generally than our Monterey. I'm sure there are other Montereys that are super, super high end, but ours is really, I think they're both really tasty wines, and I think they, quality-wise, are well suited for the appellation and the price points.
Yeah, and will you mention the price points on all these wines? I think you did on the Scrapper, but could you go through them one more time?
Yeah, so the Chenin Blanc is our $18 offering. The Chardonnay here, the Insider sells for $30. The Scrapper is $35. That's Cabernet Franc head trained from El Dorado at 2,400 feet and aged in French oak for 26 months. We only make 500 cases of that.
How do you sell it for that price? I guess the price of the fruit dictates that from Cabernet
Yeah,
Franc
somewhat.
from-
It's, I still think the wine is probably worth more than what we're charging for it, but it's somewhat niche. So we want to make sure that we don't put ourselves out of the running for some placements.
Yeah.
So those are the reasons why. There are a lot of wildfires up there. So there was no 20 vintage, no 21 vintage. We ended up making a rosé out of the 21 vintage because we wanted to help our grower.
Cabernet Franc Rosé.
Yeah.
And did you sell it on? Where did you sell it?
Yeah, we sort of chickened out in bottling it, which is too bad because the wine was really good. So we just
I've never had a Cabernet
we
Franc
bulked
Rosé.
it out.
I'm
It was
totally
good.
Curious,
it was really, really nice.
Okay.
I had a lot of experience with Napa Cabernet Sauvignon as rosé, and there are a lot of producers in Napa where we make our wine at Napa Wine Company. And years ago, Pam Starr offered me her Saignée, and we had just pulled the Saignée out of our Syrah, and it was black like Petit Syrah. And I was scratching my head right at the moment where she offered me her Saignée, and I was like, oh, problem solved. What is it of? And she said, Cabernet Sauvignon. And I don't think she saw my face, but I was like, "Ugh, that sounds disgusting." But I decided that, we'll try to make it as best we can, and if it doesn't come out, we'll just dump it down the drain. No big deal, right? It came out great.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, making a Cab Franc was essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
And it came out really nicely. Really pretty color, too.
Yeah.
So... yeah, so it's, we had a 22 vintage, which is great. God willing, we'll have a 23 vintage of the Scrapper.
Right.
And we're all just trying to put our boots back on and get back out there,
And then price on...
And the Hoffman Block Cabernet is, it's $85 for, top tier Napa Valley Cabernet.
Yeah.
It's obviously the fruit's very expensive. The Napa average is now over $9,000 a ton.
I was just going to ask
So-
that. Is it down this year a little?
I know the number's like 91.48 or something. So
We had
is
seen
that down a little? Who cares?
We had
It's so
seen some
expensive.
results of a glut of cab on the market from Napa a while back, and it seemed to be affecting the prices. But when we talked with Andy Beckstoffer about prices, how they used to be set by the government, just like oranges. That was it. It was a commodity crop and like $700 a ton. And, now it's so different now. But
Yeah, you can't even farm it for anything near that. So the
Richard-
labor costs are high.
So what's You've been at this for a while. What's some things that you look at the wine industry that, if you could, in your magic 8-ball, wonder what's going on? What's some things that you're excited about, and what's some things that you ponder, like, how are we going to get through this?
Well, it's sort of two silos for me. The first is that I think about innovation for our industry, and I've been making wine for 30 years, and I kind of came to the realization that our industry has really done a disservice to the idea of innovation, because it's sort of like custom bottlers, or even, you can have a 750 or a 375 bottling, and you can have a cork. You can use a natural cork or a synthetic cork, or we now offer screw caps. And you can have a ROPP screw cap, or we could have this fancy Stelvin style screw cap, and that's the degree to where I think we've gotten in innovation. And now during COVID, I know it existed before, but wine in cans became a thing. All the ready-to-drink cocktails are a thing now, many of them coming in the can format. But I was approached by a company a couple years ago called Wander and Ivy, and they actually make organically made wines from organic grapes, and they do single-serve wine in glass.
Right.
And
wait, what?
Yeah, isn't that crazy? So it's single-serve wine in glass. So it's, if you've seen a Voss water bottle, it's like a cylinder.
Yep.
And then the cap continues the cylinder. It's a plastic cap.
Mm-hmm.
But that's essentially what their format is. And it's kind of lovely if you think about it. Like, if you just want a glass of wine, that's what we have with beer.
Right.
You want a beer, you buy a 6-pack, you drink 2 or 3 a night, and you're good.
Right.
Or maybe you just want a beer. So Dana Spalding started this company, and it's kind of a cute story. I'm sure I'll butcher it, but her husband likes whiskey, and you open a bottle of whiskey and it'll last for 200 years probably. Right. But he would tease her, and she's very health oriented, and she'll have a glass of wine, but she doesn't want more than that. And but she'd have a bottle of wine, and he'd tease her that, are you going to waste another bottle of wine tonight? Because she'd have a glass, and maybe the next day she wouldn't want a glass of wine, and the rest of the bottle eventually would go bad. She'd have to dump it out, or maybe cook with it or whatever. So they had this kind of teasy relationship about this, and it sort of it turned into this baby, which is Wander and Ivy. And the reason why I bring it up is because I challenged myself to be a part of something that was innovative. I wasn't the one who did the innovating. I didn't come up with the idea, but I've been really ingrained in working with it to use existing bottling equipment to deliver a sound product, which is really hard to do, because the bottles are 187 mils, and we're bottling it with gravity fill, right? It's not a counter pressure filler, and most of those fillers are rated for a 750. So if you can get under half a part per million oxygen in a 750, you're good, right? If you take half a part per million and you multiply it by 4, and I say 4 because it's 4 times smaller,
right?
Then you get 2 parts per million oxygen is like pretty close to saturated, right?
Right.
So that's the challenge, right? Is I'm using traditional equipment that isn't really meant to do 187s,
right?
And we've developed some techniques, myself and the winery where we make our wine at Napa Wine Company, in order to try to accomplish the impossible mission, so to speak. And it's been extremely challenging for me. But I welcome a challenge. I think most people do. I think most winemakers do.
Yeah.
And so it's really inspired me to want to be better, a better winemaker, better at my job, better communicator, and to work with people that are smarter than me, that I admire.
There's the key. Work with people that are smarter than you.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I see you looking at these guys, you know.
Everybody's smarter than me.
That's a low bar. But so it's, for me, it's a little bit of a renaissance, and I appreciated them giving me the opportunity.
That's
it's
cool.
a great company, and I think you'll see it around. They're incredible marketers, and Dana has a finance background, so she's done a really good job raising funds for it. And it's a woman-owned company, which is really great too. So
Give them a shout out again.
it's Wander and Ivy. So they're really rich on social media, especially Instagram. And you just go to Instagram at Wander and Ivy, and you'll see a lot of pretty stuff.
So it sounds like a great idea. My only pushback is like the discussion about glass. Now, I mean, we're already having discussions about this glass ending up in landfills, and now you're talking about we're going to produce 4 bottles for every bottle, in essence.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And the cases are heavy, right? There's 24 bottles in a case. All that's true. I feel like we as a country, at least here in America, are really good at recycling glass. I feel like we're good at that. I think our recycling programs, even if people don't put bottles in the recycling bin, they're fished out in the garbage stream, and I think they do a really, really, really good job about that, and they reclaim the glass. They certainly do that with aluminum as well, with cans.
Can the single serve glass be thinner, or does it have to be a certain thickness?
It tends to be a little bit heavier.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's required, but
Perception of quality.
I think it's heavier when you look at the bottle given its size.
Right.
It's not heavier than a bottle, but if you
But if
take
you took
a case
4 of them
those,
together, it would weigh more than one 750 glass.
yeah, I would think so.
Right.
For sure.
I mean, I will say the package is attractive and looks more like a bottle than like a test tube.
And it also looks like more wine than just a glass.
Yeah.
But I assure you, if you have a decent sized wine glass, if you tip the whole thing in there, it'll go.
If they
it'll
could
fit.
figure out a subscription sort of thing where, they were shipping it to you, you're drinking it, and you're returning the bottles back to them. And you can actually reuse the bottles.
Yeah.
But that's the ongoing problem is trying to reuse bottles.
No, I love it. Aesthetically, I love it.
Yeah,
it's
very
very nicely
One of
done.
the things that I love about it is that here we're 4 dudes, and we're like talking to each other about how pretty that is, and it's a little confusing to me that that's the case, because I think we all appreciate certain aesthetic, but this is you could definitely see how this would appeal to a female audience. But just about every guy I've shown this to reacts the same way. It's like, yeah, this is great, this is really pretty, this is nice, it's classy, and the wine's good. So
I mean,
that's the word, classy.
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt, and this can go back to our previous conversation that we were in the middle of, is that, I mean, in the United States, we've done a very poor job marketing wine from, the beginnings when wine started to take off in California, call it in the 60s and 70s, 80s, and where we was like, wine is for a special occasion. People they wouldn't open wine. It was really kind of a cocktail age, and it's kind of shifted and whatnot, but we always treat wine oddly. Like, I remember when I was learning the business, it was always discussed that it was weird that we tell you what wine's supposed to taste like, and we tell you what's good, right, in our marketing. Like, somehow these judges or wine writers will tell you what you should buy, and really what we should be doing is trying to just get people to try wines and figure out what they like themselves, right?
Sure.
And I never thought about that until you just actually said that. And isn't that so strange that, like, you don't have a milk that comes out and says it's a 98% rated milk, or a clothing line where, like, the jacket is rated a 8.7 out of 10, or
Are we the only rating system then?
Well, no, I mean, there's
what else
more,
have you
and then
heard?
there's, beef is rated in different things, but it is sort of strange, I guess, that I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's, it's just kind of an odd way to think about it, as opposed to it just being part of your culture, I think, from my impression, as it is in Europe, where, you drink, I mean, certainly ratings are important there, and prestige and how it's marketed. but it's also just part of their culture, so they don't think about that so much. They buy the wines that they like, and they drink them, and they consume them as part of their life, not as a special event. Or
I have a slightly different viewpoint of what you just talked about, and that is that I think each one of us would agree that if we walked up to a restaurant and it wasn't 4:30 or 5 o'clock, say it was 6:30, 7, time where you go to dinner, and you look in the restaurant and it's empty, you're probably going to turn right around and walk out, right?
Yeah.
That, I think, is what people do with ratings, is that they don't want to be the ones making the decision themselves. They need an endorsement from a third party to tell them that it's good.
Yeah.
And that's the best analogy I can give for how that relates to me and possibly you.
Yeah. I mean, I would say the same thing. I go to a wine shop. I would more likely buy wine at a wine shop where I could talk to someone and talk through what I'm looking for than I would just buying something off the shelf. So,
right.
But you're right. I'm looking for that expert, that third person party also. So, I would say I'm in the same way.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you said something earlier about sort of the gloom and doom of our industry and how do we get past COVID and that whole thing.
Yeah.
Which is certainly on my mind quite a bit. Old Volkswagen bus, cool. I feel like I think it's important that we as an industry focus on trying to carry on, number one. You just got to keep doing, and I guess I'm telling myself this, you got to keep doing what you're doing, right? Because this is what, this is what we signed up for, right? This is who we are.
Right.
Try not to make crazy risks, right? Try to be cautious, because there are a lot of companies, I think, sadly, that are going to go out of business over this eventually. And I know a lot of us are suffering now. It's kind of hard to say how it's going to pan out ultimately. But I also think that because there are fewer and fewer of us left, it's really important that we still exist.
Yeah.
Because it's becoming just ginormous corporate wine companies, and they buy brands and they just run them hard, and
or run them into the ground.
Well,
too.
I think that they push hard. The classic example is Constellation buys a brand. They buy Meiomi, right? And they spend $500 million or whatever the hell it is. And the fastest way that they can get the return on their investment is to capitalize on the popularity. So, if the Wagners got it to 7 million cases, I'm just making numbers up. I don't know what the numbers are. No, I do think it was 700,000 cases that they got to. The faster that Constellation can get that brand to 2 million cases is the faster that they could pay the $500 million bill.
Right.
And then that brand may hit a peak and it'll start going down, less volume every year. But every year after they pay the original purchase is gravy. They're
Right.
just making money, and they don't even have to do much marketing because the brand's already established.
Right.
So, that is the classic. I mean, sure, like, I'd sell my brand if somebody was going to pay me that kind of money, of course. Like, who wouldn't do that?
In case anyone's listening.
Right. But the bottom line is that innovation requires people who are committed to making a difference and to create things that serve the public, that are things that people want. And we're the ones, the smaller operators are the ones that are going to take the chances that will turn into the trends of tomorrow, which ultimately Constellation will want to buy.
Right.
Now, that shouldn't be the motivating factor of why you do it, I think, but I'm almost sort of thinking about it serial entrepreneur-wise, right? Put a project together, do a good job at it, run it for however long you run it, and then do the next one,
Right.
and so on and so
Right.
forth. And that's really, I think, how this should work. So to try to inspire people to keep doing it to reach higher. There are people listening to this, I imagine, who, I always wanted to do this. I always wanted to do that. Fucking do it. What are you waiting for? I mean, now's the time. Now is the time to do it. So I feel like if you've been sitting on something that is a winner and you're just too afraid to step out of the box and do it, I think now is the time to do it. Yeah. And we need it as an industry, and it's going to put a kick in your step to do that as well. So I hope that inspires a few people that are listening, and if so,
that gets for sure.
Cool.
Well, that's awesome. Well, anything else, Brian?
No, I'm
a lot to contemplate.
No, super excited actually to hear about progress on the space and having the ability to do tastings in the restaurant, and love the wines. I think we should give people the
website one
the
more time.
web address so they can actually reach out and just get wine sent directly to them, because we have listeners in every single state.
VinumCellars.com. So cellars like the wine cellars. Vinum, Vinum.
Yeah.
And we're on Instagram too. So Vinum Cellars Napa Valley. So we just started working with a company down in Central Coast, and they're doing some marketing for us to help us with direct sales.
Yeah.
And they're starting to do Instagram. And then I also I kind of enjoy Instagram. Maybe inspired by something you said earlier, Bart. Like, most everyone's smarter than me, but I can deal with pictures.
Right.
So, so my handle there is Richard Bruno winemaker, and so I post some fun things, and it's a lot of stuff about the vineyard. And when my son was playing a lot of baseball, a lot of postings of his home runs and stuff like that. So it's been
how
a lot
old
of
is he?
fun. He's 18. He's going to Cal Poly in a couple weeks.
Nice, congrats.
Yeah, thanks.
Congratulations.
Brian, you were just out watching some baseball. How old were those kids?
11 and 12 at the Little League World Series.
That's when that starts getting exciting.
Yeah.
It's very pure.
Is he going to play ball for Cal Poly?
He will definitely play on their club team. He's talking to them right now about a bullpen catcher position. It's not really a position, but they need a bullpen catcher.
Yeah.
My son's a catcher.
Okay.
So he is going to talk to them about that. I just want to make sure that, he won't be on the team. So at least not, if he takes that position. But I just want to make sure that if he gets hurt, that they're going to take care of him, and also that it won't interfere with the club baseball.
Right.
Like if it was like bullpen catcher, or you actually get to play on the club team, I'd much rather have him play on the club team.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, as long as he gets to play, he'll be happy, and I'll be happy. But he's going to the forestry and fire science program.
Oh, you know what? Do you know Mike Cox?
Oh yeah, someone recently told me this. Yeah,
Mike's son is in that same program.
Yeah. Actually, that's funny. Someone else told me that last week. So yeah.
Alexander.
Okay.
Yeah, shout out Mike Cox getting me into the Sonoma Valley Vintners and Growers Association Harvest Kickoff Party the other night.
There you go.
Yeah,
that was fun.
Totally, we had a good time.
Yeah.
And then what's going on with Harvest? You pretty excited, or you're getting ready, right?
Well, I mean, I just did the bird netting over the weekend, and I feel like every year it sort of feels like, I'm always late getting X, Y, and Z done. And this year I feel like I've been able to accomplish every task on time.
A little extra time this year, a little bit, just a little bit.
I mean, good. Bird netting too. Yeah. Like, if you're behind bird netting, then
you're behind.
You're really behind.
Yeah. You lose to the birds.
Yeah. So I'm trying out this. I'm sort of renting to own a bird laser. It's the brand name's Avix with 2 X's. And I don't know if it works yet.
That sounds so cool. It sounds like you're going to be killing birds with lasers.
Oh, I would totally do that if given the choice. Bastards, they don't my
So what exactly does this do?
So here's the theory behind it. So if during the day, if you take a laser pointer and I shine it over there across the table and it hits the wall, you'll see the dot on the wall.
Right.
But none of us during the day can see the actual laser beam. and it's because we lack an additional oil in our eyeballs that birds have. And so birds can actually see the laser beam during the day. And so this thing is a program pattern that goes throughout the vineyard in sort of a randomized pattern. And it goes from one end to the other and back. And so what it's supposed to do is to scare the birds, to move them on. And they're making the claim that they're 83% on the minimum. But he said, you know, with a lot of regulations, you have to like pick the lowest possible number.
Right.
But he said in practice, it's much higher than that, into the 90s. So there are tons of birds in our vineyard, and I see them. And, you know, what I think I'm seeing right now, we're like just starting veraison, by the way. We're pretty late out there. And I see the birds all flying around, but I don't see them nesting. So I think it's just constantly getting them to keep moving.
Right.
But I haven't made any claims yet that it works. So we'll see.
Well, we'll see. Just like with the turkeys, they get used to shit. So we'll see if a new species of bird arises that is resistant to laser technology.
Well, it's kind of similar to what you have for flies.
Those little things that we put on the tables for the flies, they create some sort of hologram image of a huge bear, John. I think that's what it is.
I think it's just the flashing of it.
Yeah, it is. It's somehow it appears much larger than it actually is, and so it scares the insects. But like Bart says, I don't know how this shit works. I just know if I turn it on, I put two AA batteries in it, and it spins, and they're not bugging my guests eating charcuterie, then I'm a happy boy.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. And if Vinum Chenin Blanc tastes good, then buy more of it.
Exactly.
Birds going through, piercing the one grape in the middle, and then letting the juice run all through the cluster. Then more power to them. Let's laser some birds.
Absolutely.
Bird #bird laser.
Right.
We'll be on this podcast.
We'll call it the bird eliminator.
Oh, yeah. So let's not go too far. I think people will tolerate bird laser. I don't know if bird eliminator. You're not going to see any feathers or smoke or explosions or anything. You just won't see any birds. That's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
The days of leaving. Never mind. I'm not going to go there.
Right.
Well, guys, thanks for having me.
You bet. No, thank you.
Yeah,
thanks for
Good
coming on.
conversation. Thanks for sharing the stories.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right.
Wines are delicious.
Thank you.
Bart, any shout-outs?
Vintage Festival's coming 28th and 29th of August.
No.
We keep going
No.
through
September. It's in September.
September.
Thank
You're
God.
Right. It is September because Rosa
I got way too much shit to take care of before then.
Rosa would be today. The 29th is the Legends Dinner at B.R. Cohen. Tickets are for sale.
And if you want to get tickets for, we are hosting or sponsoring, I'm not exactly sure which. I'm totally confused by the terminology. If you want to sit at the 16600 table.
No, if you want to sit at the Dane Cellars table.
If you want to sit at the 16600 table, Bart will be at his table. Sam will, you know what would be awesome?
We're just
if
sitting
you're
together.
A couple,
yeah.
Is get one ticket for Bart's table and one ticket for a 16600 table, and then you can share your wines back and forth. You're going to bring some old shit, some fun stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to do the same thing.
And you know what? Each course you can switch tables.
Right. That actually sounds really cool. Let's. You know what? Listeners, podcast listeners, if you want to come to the dinner, get 2 tickets, get one for each table, and we will happily share the wines with both of you.
So that is Friday night, September 29th.
No, Saturday.
Friday night, September 29th.
The dinner?
Saturday night.
Saturday night's the dinner.
Saturday is the festival in the plaza all day long. And then Saturday night is the grand tasting at the barracks.
Okay. We'll get this all nailed down. I'm sure there's someone in charge. Oh, that's right. There is someone in charge. And it's not us.
Right.
Is there a way I could send you guys a couple magnums for that?
Of course.
Of our cab?
Yeah.
So
I mean, if you just... the magnums that spend a little extra time in oak? What?
No, they're bottled on the same day.
Oh, yeah. I saw something where you were like, oh, I got these magnums and they spent a little extra time in oak, and I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool idea. Like, let's do our normal 750 bottling, and then like few months later, we'll do a Magnum bottling. Okay. You were laughing like you were like, yeah, he knows what I'm
No,
talking
it's not.
about.
We've done that before, just not
Yeah.
on the
Okay, cool.
Magnums per se. But
And of course, Catherine Russell on the 17th.
Yes, so September 17th, Grenache Day.
Are there any tickets left?
There is still tickets left, and I want to encourage people to bring your chairs. I think that was a message we forgot to put out. We're going to send a follow-up email, but I mean, we only have 200 tickets, and I know at least half of them are sold already, so we're getting close to the date. So get your tickets. We're going to be pouring great wine, and we're going to have good food, and it's going to be a beautiful day, and it's going to be the best concert Sonoma's ever seen.
And it's during the afternoon, basically, right?
So doors open at 4, concert
There you
starts
go.
at
There you
5. Tony Saunders and Keystone Revisited, and then Catherine will take the stage with the grand piano, and all at a barn.
A barn in a vineyard in
amazing.
Sonoma.
Yeah.
On a
And
side
then if
road.
you want to get tickets for the dinner at the Sweet D, the Girl in the Fig is putting on a great dinner for Grenache Day, and you can go to figcaters.com and purchase tickets for that event. I mean, it's one long table of like 100 people. Vicky Carroll from Hospice Daron is just lining the entire table with Grenache. It's going to be very
quite a night.
splendorous. And then if you haven't gotten your invite for Friday night party, then you're not invited. Friday night we're doing a little special grower and industry and
At
winemaker
an
dinner.
undisclosed amount. And
Undisclosed
you'll just have to
location, and if you hear about it and you show up, just do the secret knock on the back door, and we'll let you in.
And the code is Phil sent me, as always, correct?
wonder. Not in that case, it won't work.
Not in that case.
It won't work?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
That's it.
Wine Club's going out soon, so excited.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Sorry I was late this morning.
Thank you guys.
Running back from Napa early. So,
Yeah.
all right. Thanks, Richard. Much appreciated.
great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
You bet.